Welcome to another episode, and I learned something about you. You've been on, this is your second time, so the intro is really not necessary. But Michael, what do you mean Mariah Carey's too old?
Uh, I didn't say she's too old. I just said she's like 700. She's like
That's like an old.
she's like an ancient ethereal demon woman.
All right, pick one person that you would like do anything for.
What do you mean do anything for?
Anything for. One person that I would do anything. I would kill somebody for Mariah Carey.
Oh, maybe Shawn Mendes.
Why Shawn Mendes?
I don't know. He looks like a living sculpture. He looks like he's made of cream. He's gorgeous.
My only issue is when I go into a store like around Christmas time and you hear Mariah Carey's #1 hit during Christmas start playing, most people are like, I'm sick of this song, or some people are like, I love this song. I just get aroused and I'm like, I need to sit down.
I don't know if Christmas should arouse. Well, you're Jewish, so like Christmas is exotic for you. You know,
it's one of those foreign events when most people are celebrating Easter and all that. I'm celebrating Passover.
Yeah, exactly. You're like Christmas curious.
Christmas curious. Can I mark that down on a census test?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I got really excited.
I'm pretty sure the LGBTQIA plus community just added that to an official identity.
Wait, hold
Christmas curious.
Is there? Wait on. I didn't know. Is there an IA plus now?
Yeah, I don't. They just keep adding letters. I'm gay and I can't keep up with it.
Is it okay to seclude most of the alphabet, even though they're including some of it?
No, I don't think that's acceptable anymore. I think you have to add all the letters if you really want to be inclusive.
Yeah, but when's offensive going to be offensive? I tweeted at Army Hammer today because I was doing my laundry and I looked over and saw Arm and Hammer and I'm like, oh my God, it's a conspiracy. I was explaining this and someone was like, well, that's his great grandfather started the company. And I was like, but their thing at the bottom says for absolute purity. And I'm like, you got caught with sexual allegations. Not only that, you tried to eat your girlfriend's ribs. Like,
well, I guess it makes sense because Arm and Hammer covers up odors. So if you're going to kill people and eat them,
that's what I'm saying. That's the best ways to get blood stains out of a carpet.
Yeah, it's all coming together now.
Now look, but here's the thing though. Does a name like that inspire or create that type of evil? Because if we look at, Bernie Madoff, come on.
What about Bernie Madoff?
His name is Bernie Madoff, and he made off with a large sum.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's I think that's a sign that we're living in a simulation.
Cosby, Drowsy, come on.
That's a stretch.
That's a stretch.
That's a bit of a stretch.
I'm sorry. That's only people I know with names that really correlate. There's another one out there too. I'm trying to remember. It's a famous one. It just has me curious because I found out, who's that guy? Bezos. His last name's Bezos.
Jeff Bezos.
His real name is Warren Wilhelm.
That sounds like if I was going to be a billionaire, I'd stick with that name.
It's a fucking supervillain name, like your Lex Luthor.
Yeah, that's like a comic book name. I would have went with that. I don't know. He's an odd dude though.
What's odd?
He doesn't look human. Do you ever really like watch him?
Joe Biden doesn't look human.
His eyes move weird. I feel like he has a condition, so maybe I'm being an ableist, but
hey,
he looks like an animatronic of himself. Like a Disney animatronic of Jeff Bezos. He just doesn't, I'm pretty sure he's a reptilian.
Are you belief of that?
No, not at all.
Because I was super excited.
It's just fun to entertain.
I was super excited when I saw Backwoods Radio Show is hopefully starting back up again. Because I'm like,
it's getting there. It's been a long time coming.
Well, you took a much needed break, but at the same time, anything for hopes onto the future of it. Because I already, I got ideas like a madman. First of all, I do want to say one thing. Your show, as crazy as it is, I've never felt like that one episode you posted with the Tooth Fairy about the child who had like a severe bone disease or something.
Yeah, it was like basically the Elephant Man.
the
It
way
was that type of character.
you explained it in such detail where I literally started getting a tear going down my eye. And then you're like, and he kills all these kids and gives it to the tooth fairy that takes the teeth. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I don't know. It's funny because as dark as my sense of humor is and as grotesque as the show is, I am kind of a sappy person. So inevitably, even when I plan on the show just being like ridiculous and gross, somehow I always end up like falling in love with the characters and like humanizing them, even though they're all mutants and murderers, you know?
Yeah.
Because in their world, they're good guys. They don't see themselves as they think tourists are subhuman, you know? So to them, this is their contained little world, and outsiders are the bad guys, which is like typical for like movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So the whole point was to, you know, make it so the world, you almost get like engrossed in the world where you stop seeing this deviant behavior as deviant and evil. They're meant to be the good guys. So yeah, there's a lot of that in the podcast.
Well, depending on where you're from, I mean, who's to say what's the better reality? Is your version of the Backwoods Radio Show this small little town in Dog Snout County? I mean, is that should that be okay that everybody's that comfortable being so like? I think the biggest issue in the world is not being able to truly be yourself, depending on if yourself is an asshole or
Right.
if. But I'm like, I like that. That's why I like when Army Hammer. I mean, his name. Besides the company and all that, I'm like, but he's honest about his shit. You got to give him credit about that. He's
Yeah,
like,
he's proud to be a cannibal. Obviously, the Backwoods Radio Show endorses him, and I would love to have him on.
Is it better to be?
Maybe he'll move to Dog Snout County.
Is it better to be hiding that you're a cannibal or just be open about your shit?
Yeah, I think you should be open.
Yeah.
I think you know, maybe the LGBTQIA plus Christmas curious community can add cannibals to the list.
That Christmas curious one. I need to see that on a Hallmark card. I'm sorry, that's just too good, dude. Christmas curious.
It's stupid.
It's dumb as shit, man. But like, I had so many people message me like, "Do you hear about this new super straight movement?" I'm like, "What the? Why? What are we doing?"
The super straight's funny. I don't blame these guys on TikTok going, you know, creating super straight because even though I'm gay, like I see so much shit on TikTok of like gay guys saying that straight guys that won't fuck them are homophobic, which is the craziest shit I've ever heard. So that's why straight guys retaliated and came up with super straight. And I'm like, yeah, and they should be allowed to be that way. You know, if you're fighting for the right to be gay and be attracted to the gender of your choosing, then straight people should be able to do the same thing.
First of all,
it's just ridiculous.
Let me just say that when you said your number 2 was Tom Holland, my immediate thought in my head was, oh my God, this is why he talks to me so much, is because I look like his second crush.
You don't look enough like Tom Holland that I'm gonna stalk you and you know, kidnap you and put you in a cage in my basement like I've been plotting to do with Tom Holland. But
is it bad that I feel upset about that?
I suppose if that doesn't work out, I may be plan B might have to be Ocean City. So
it's bad that I was upset about it. I was like, damn, all right, well, man, if I'm not good enough to be trapped in a basement, man, maybe I should aspire for that to be, but
that's what we should all aspire to be. We should all aspire to be locked up in a cage in Army Hammer's cellar. I think deep down, that's what all of us want. I mean, you know, it's the ultimate form of love.
If you're being cast down or created onto this earth and you get to pick one thing that you get to do that a lot of people aren't going to agree with, what would it be? I mean, come on, being a cannibal, does it sound that bad compared to like getting off on raping people?
No, because, you know, in the end, it's just about nutrition and
how much protein content is in a human foot?
I don't know. You know, I should know that considering my podcast is about cannibals, but I don't know.
I mean, a lot of included in your podcast, for instance, is better than what goes on at Taco Bell. I mean, I know they had the horse. Did you see that recently? There was a giant recall on like 130 something thousand pounds of lasagna that was in frozen entrees and stuff like that because it was containing a contaminated style of meat. And I was like,
What
oh,
kind of meat?
it was because it was just like with the cinnamon toast crunch. The dude found shrimp tails in his
Yeah,
cinnamon toast crunch.
shrimp. I don't know if I believe that one.
I believe it because even Cinnamon Toast Crunch just came out and saying, because the weird thing is they talk about it's right next to a blueberry plant because apparently that same company produces a lot of blueberries.
Yeah.
And apparently what makes the ground fertile is shrimp. And I'm just like, I fucking live in a sea town. I eat nothing but seafood. I've never heard shrimp being used as fertilizer.
I've never heard of that either.
Yeah, but apparently
I guess that would make sense.
Well,
because when I first heard that, I was like, shrimp tails. What sense does that make?
It's like a failed spinoff show of Dragon Tales.
Shrimp tails.
But when I was looking at the meat contamination and all the frozen entrees, they had a list of like frozen entree companies that were making things with lasagna and stuff like that, like pasta. They were like, recall it all. It's got some type of bad meat in it. And I'm like, man, is this like when I got salmonella off Honey Smacks? Like,
you got salmonella from Honey Smacks?
Yeah, they recalled that back in like 2019.
Jesus, I eat raw cookie dough all the time. I never get salmonella, let alone from Honey Smacks.
But that's like a old wives' tale. Like when a parent goes, you'll go blind from masturbating too much, and it's really just to get a way to ask your kid if he's masturbating. Like, is that true? It's like you fucking. I didn't think you get salmonella from cookie dough though.
Raw eggs, they say.
But what about Rocky Balboa?
Well, that's the thing is raw eggs. People have been eating raw eggs forever. So I don't know. I don't know how common it is. Now, though, Pillsbury, they're like, packages of sugar cookies, with the little pre-made circles of dough. Now it says safe to eat raw. And even though I ate it raw before, I would like limit myself. I'm like, just in case I get salmonella. But now it's bad because I'll just eat a whole package of sugar cookie dough.
Like it's yogurt?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
I always get scared at opening up the container because it makes that pop, and I don't.
Oh, not that. These are like the pre-cut circles of cookie dough, and I just pop them in my mouth because why bother baking them? Cut out the middleman, straight to the stomach.
Yeah, I'm with you on that because I don't like waiting for things. When someone says they have to put something in a crock pot for a couple of hours, I'm like, get that the fuck out of my house.
Yeah, crock pots suck, but I just got an Instant Pot. And those things are fucking awesome because you can do the same shit that you do in a crock pot, but in like 30 minutes instead of 6 hours. So I've been cooking in that a lot.
Is that like the air fryer where people?
No, it's a pressure cooker.
Okay.
It's with just a sexy name.
Because I had some person tell me that it's air fried. I'm like,
that's just a toaster. An air fryer is just a big toaster.
Just you're cutting out the grease, sure, but it's a little bit healthier than fried food, but it's still fried.
It's really just toasted. I don't know why it's called an air fryer. It's like a toaster oven. It's like the same thing.
Toaster oven's more like, I consider that more like you earned your food at that point.
From a toaster oven?
Well, there's more of a chance probably of I don't know. It's just classics to me. Like if I walked up to my buddy's house and he's got the Ring doorbell thing that sees you when you approach it, and I was just like, I'm gonna back away. I'm gonna go home. He's like, you're not coming in. I'm like, you're too far gone. Like I walk into your house and I go, where's the remote to change the television? He goes, we don't use remotes in this house. And he pulls out his phone and does the thing. And I'm like,
yeah, he's really plugged in.
I know I can't do it, man.
I've got little bits of that. I mean, I have an Echo Dot. I got Alexa in my house. I don't have her synced up to everything. Mostly I just ask her what time it is because I'm too fat to get up from my recliner and look at the clock in the kitchen. So I just yell at Alexa from the other room. So that comes in handy. I have a Roku TV, which I can use my phone to control, but usually I still use the remote. Unless I lose it, then that's when I use the phone. I prefer a remote.
I'm about to say, I think when you go like my buddy, for instance, I asked him, I was like, do you think you're just getting like, you're not really paying attention anymore because you have all these devices? He goes, what do you mean? I'm like, because you just ask Alexa, hey, Alexa, what's the weather? She
Yeah.
goes, it's partly cloudy, 37 degrees. And then it was like giving the forecast like for the full day. And he just goes, Alexa, is it gonna rain? And then I'm like, she just told you it's partly cloudy and it's gonna be like
Right.
that all day. And he goes, oh, I didn't hear that. I'm like, yeah, because now you're so focused in on something else that you're asking. I feel like sometimes you hear somebody talk and it's like, are you just talking to fill up air in this room? Like,
Yeah.
we can sit here in silence. It's going to be fine.
Right. I think technology can be bad like that. It's fucking amazing, the things you can do with technology. Things like YouTube. I was just talking about this the other day. I feel like college is pointless with YouTube now. You can teach yourself to do anything. I have a friend who's a vet, a vet tech, and she learns more from YouTube than like from the vet teaching her stuff, like how to give a certain shot properly, things like that. So in that ways, it's beneficial. But I have always thought, like, I feel like I'm worse at math now that I can just punch shit into a calculator on my phone. You know what I mean? I'm more like dependent on that rather than, it's like I've lost the skills to like do math in my head because I'm so used to just being able to pull out my phone, punch it in. So I do think in some ways it kind of handicaps you. But
It
it's
exposes you to
hard.
much more, especially being a content creator. I mean, a lot of the stuff you probably are able to come up with and be able to mash together. I mean, the video editing I saw you make Alex Jones run and that was the funniest shit. I was like,
I want to make more shit like that.
but that is, I mean, first of all, if we talk about like, I was upset about the whole like not kidnapping me and putting me in a basement was mostly because you were the first person on my birthday and you sent me that video. And I use that video for my cover art now with the laser beams
Oh
coming
yeah,
out
yeah,
of my
yeah.
eyes. I'm like, fuck it. Maybe I would be in a better relationship with him than I would be with some other people around in this area.
Probably. I'm quite a catch. I can just edit your make anyone dating me is going to be lucky because who else can make their head flow through space and shoot lasers out of their eyes? It's hard to come by.
That's something you put on the Tinder profile.
Yeah, that should. Yeah, if I had Tinder, that would be my profile picture.
That's where I think you hear a lot of people on Twitter say like I'm a stand-up comedian. I'm like, well, where are you performing? But it started with Tinder. Everyone's Tinder bio is like a fucking joke. It's literally one giant like, if you don't like Power Rangers, then you can step off because I'm a Power Ranger fanatic and we're gonna cuddle all night while I watch Red Ranger take off his pants. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, it's funny because everyone I know is on Tinder, but I don't know anybody who's met anyone off Tinder. They're all like, I just spend a bunch of time on it. Sometimes they might talk to someone, but then they've never met up. I don't get the point. I guess just to hook up,
Yeah, but
I
to
don't know.
hook up, but you never go and see that person. A lot of people are like, I'm going to keep swiping, and then they get matched. And then you're like me. When I get matched, I start talking to the person. And then I'm like, well, what day are you free? I'm not free. It's like immediately when someone likes me, I immediately stop liking that person. I like the chase, and I don't know why.
I don't know. It sounds like you hate yourself.
I do a little bit.
And any sign of someone liking you, like this person's out of their fucking mind. Who could ever like me?
Who are you?
You don't trust them now. You don't trust their opinion.
I was kind of thinking about like, because I was watching this show and they were talking about like sexual kinks, and the woman's like, well, I'm asexual. And I'm like, never heard that one before. And then she was like, well, I don't ever need to have sex, but I do it for my husband. And I'm like, is that possible? Like you just end up being so alone that you're like, nobody will ever love me, so then I will never need love. And then you just annihilate that trait out of your genes.
I suppose that's possible. I think there's people that are genuinely asexual for sure. Just something in their biology. They just don't have the drive. But I don't remember where I heard this, but I have heard before that a lot of times people who are asexual usually have like low testosterone or something like that. But that's become such an identity, that a lot of times they don't want to hear that if you tell them that. But I think scientifically, a lot of times that's what it is.
Well, science is not real anymore.
No, it's not. I mean, I know maybe two people who are asexual, and I will say they never seemed sexual. You know what I mean? Like they never seemed to have a sexual bone in their body. So I do believe that they were like that all along, but whether that comes down to biology, who knows?
I think you make that energy productive somewhere else. Like for me, I work out twice a day now. So I don't really have the time to do it. Like I don't ever have the urge to, you know what I mean? So I'm like, it's getting put somewhere else. It's like if I'm an insomniac, so it's like not sleeping or, sleeping very little.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be more productive if I got full 8 hours, but I use that not sleeping playing Dragon fucking City, playing all these.
Dragon City.
Dude, 892 dragons can't be wrong.
Wow. No, that's definitely an accomplishment you should be very proud of.
Let me tell you something. When I die, if that's not part of my credits, then I don't want anything to do with this world.
I never play games like that. Is that like a mobile game or is it PC?
It's a mobile game. I think that's why it's so much fun. If that got moved to a console.
I don't do mobile games.
It's on PC too,
say,
but you got to go onto Facebook.
There are a couple. There's some really interesting ones because I really kind of like all types of video games. I love video games, but kind of it because I'm so into movies, filmmaking, things like that. I do tend to go for like more creative video games, and there was a couple mobile games I played that were really good, really unique. One was a puzzle game called Monument Valley. And you just kind of solve these, it's like optical illusion puzzles. Those like optical illusions where it's like a staircase and it looks like it never ends. And
like a Rembrandt painting.
Yeah. And so to solve puzzles, you're like a little character and it's got like this great atmosphere, really like ambient, calm music. And you like swipe to like rotate the level you're on and to change like the illusion. So then you can like go up the stairs to like another level. That was really cool. And then this other mobile game that was really unique, forget what it was called. This guy has a few games where it's almost like a text adventure, like old fashioned, where it's just kind of story driven. And, but the way it's set up is like, the one is like, you're talking to an astronaut stranded on the moon and it's set up like a text interface. Like he's like texting you from the moon and he'll like ask, oh, should I go north or should I go south? And then you pick which one, like an old adventure game. But what's cool is throughout the day, you might not hear from him for like 6 hours and then you'll get a ding on your phone. Like he just messaged you. So even though it's fake, it almost becomes like you get like attached to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It feels like a real person, but like with a crazy story going on and it's like bleeding over into your real life. And I got to find out the name of that. That was really unique. So yeah, I guess there's been a couple mobile games, but no Dragon City, no freemium games.
It's funny because when you say like getting attached to something, there was a recent hashtag on Twitter that was trending and it was Nintendogs. Everyone was logging back into their old profile because they thought it was going to get a remake. They were so sad because their dogs looked like shit. I mean, they were dirty. They hadn't washed. They realized they just neglected this thing like a Tobigachi or whatever. Thing is.
It is funny how you can get attached like that. Did you ever play? I think one of the best game developers who's really good at that is
anything by Ubisoft. I feel like is amazing.
Oh, I love Ubisoft. This guy, I mean, this dude makes art. He made Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, and The Last Guardian.
Yeah,
I don't know if you played any of these. And man, you get attached to those fucking companions in those games. And his games are so lonely and just like the worlds are usually so empty and you usually have a companion and you really get attached to it. And then the motherfucker like kills the horse at the end of Shadow of the Colossus. And you're just like, what the fuck? Cause you just ride around like a wasteland with this horse all for hours and hours. It's your only friend. There's no enemies in the game except for when you ride up to a new Colossus to kill. And then when that horse fucking falls off the cliff, it's like, oh, it rips your heart out.
Yeah. Do you ever hate it when someone looks at you like and judges you based on the decisions you make in a video game? Like for instance, Mass Effect. you can fuck the people that are on your spaceship. And
Yeah, it's
people are
pretty
like,
cool.
why would you do that? Like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Why would you fuck that? I'm like, the option's in the game. I'm not the only dick that thought about it.
Actually, I think you might be. I think you're the only person who ever played Mass Effect and decided to fuck the aliens on that ship. I think you need help.
Bullshit, because they would have not made.
I fucked every alien I possibly
I'm about to
could in
say,
Mass Effect.
they would have not made the alien chicks look like that if they weren't expecting a guy like me to be able to think of that.
Yeah. That was, that game was that was pretty ahead of its time. You could fuck men, women, and aliens. That was pretty wild back then.
Okay, I've been bringing this up recently. Like, I feel like technology is like slowly catching up, but they're like 10 years behind. There's now advertisements that started like this year of like, you would see a gay couple on screen. I'm like, why the fuck is that now just happening? I was like, I thought we've been following these rules for like a really long time. Like, I think we all agree that whatever, but I just saw it on the TV and I was just like, I'm happy this is up, but like at the same time, why did it take so fucking long?
It's weird because I don't think it did take that long. I think people kind of make a bigger deal out of this sort of thing because when you think back in the 90s, there were so many gay movies. So many. Like The Birdcage, even Mrs. Doubtfire, which is a family film, his brother's gay, the one who makes him the mask.
That's a transgender thing movie too.
Yeah. For in a sense, it kind of is. And I mean, that was, a family film had a gay couple in it. Maybe they weren't the main character, but for me, I feel like there were so many times, at least for me growing up in the 90s, where I saw like normal gay people in movies where I didn't feel weird about it. You know what I mean? So when people say there was no representation, maybe it wasn't always the best, but it's been there. I mean, it was there enough to have an effect on me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there was a movie that
I think everything's blown out of proportion. Everything.
There was I talked about this with a comedian in the past was telling, well, we can say comedian with the the emphasis on the word, but she had told me, she was like, Space Force was a racist show, and I was like, how was it racist? She's like, didn't have enough Asian representation, and I was like, okay, I get your point, I guess, but I mean, it had a few people in there, and they even talked about Jimmy Jimmy Wong, whatever his name was. Jimmy, I don't know if it's Jimmy Woo. He's
Jimmy Woo's a character from WandaVision. That's a fictional character. Yeah. That's a Marvel character.
But he was, but that actor, not that guy, not the one that played in fucking The Interview. The guy, oh my god, I'm gonna blank on it. But he played one of the Asian scientists in Space Force.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about like how they needed more of an Asian cast, so he just randomly suggested his dad, and then they hired his dad to play like the Chinese NASA tech, and his dad did a way better job than he did. But I was like, I didn't like. Why does that matter? Like, there's a movie that we're never going to be able to see called Rub and Tug, and the title gives it away 100%. You know who was going to play this character was Scarlett Johansson. She was going to play a transgender laundromat owner, and it was secretly a massage parlor that's why the movie's called Rub and Tug. But she didn't want to do it because they were like, you should get a real trans person to play, and she thought that was too much heat on her. I'm like, they're getting somebody based on the actor. Like The Rock got a lot of shit for not being they didn't get an amputee actor to play that San Andre or that Andreas movie.
Right.
I'm like, it's the fucking Rock. You're getting The Rock for The Rock.
Yeah. I for me, I can get where people come from if they don't feel represented in stuff they watch, but at the same time, you also can't expect to be represented in everything, just like how white people shouldn't expect to be represented on like BET, you know what I mean? Sometimes things are made for specific groups. But I can understand that, but then what gets tricky is when people get upset, like The Rock playing an amputee. But the argument to that is like, if you have a big actor, people are going to pay to come see that movie. And if they're playing some sort of, marginalized person, that can shed light on those issues. So you can see that as a positive. Like I would have never been upset if a straight actor plays a gay character in a movie. You know what I mean? Especially if they're a really cool, likable character and they make people who maybe don't like gay people be like, oh, gay people can be like that. Oh, that guy's cool.
Neil Patrick Harris is a fucking icon.
And he's really gay, and he played straight a lot, which I don't think it should matter. I don't care. Yeah, I don't, as a gay guy, I don't care. I don't care if the person playing a gay character is gay or straight. I just hope that they don't make the character a joke. You know what I mean? If it's a good character, I don't care.
Yeah.
They're an actor.
I want to see content out there. It's just, there's so much, like, I talk to a lot of content creators that are like, they're just fearing of saying something or doing something that's going to offend or get them canceled or something like that. And I mean, I had that long podcast where a guy was telling me cancel culture isn't real. Then he lost the bet and now he's going to come on and eat a hat. I'm happy about that. But yeah. I'm like, that's what I love about your show, for instance, is like, what the fuck are you going to cancel? Like, you're clicking into this thing and everything is like, oh my God.
Yeah, and nothing's right. It's all fucked up. It's all
it's
depraved.
Beautiful.
And that's kind of, I've thought that too. I'm like, I don't know what you could get offended by it because it's so absurd and ridiculous. It's like you're either going to be offended by all of it or none of it, Yeah, cancel culture.
Do you think you get away with a lot of the stuff you create because it is an audio drama? It's a lot like a story. Because like let's take comedy jokes, for instance. If you were having like a comedy style thing, you could get canceled for a lot of jokes or something like that. But nobody cancels Pulp Fiction. Nobody cancels like what other movies we could say? Django. Nobody can't, where they're just, I mean, you don't even, Quentin Tarantino does not get shit for all the stuff because it came out of his mind. It's a creative masterpiece because it's in movie form.
Yeah. Well, people do try and cancel Tarantino, and Samuel L. Jackson always defends him. Always. In an interview, Samuel L. Jackson said, like, someone asked him if Quentin Tarantino is racist, and Samuel L. Jackson said something along the lines of, he's like, every character he's ever written for me has been like the smartest, most capable character in the movie. He's like, he writes better roles for me than most other directors. If the man was racist, he'd be incapable of writing a role like that, for a guy like me. People just want to be angry, man. It's weird.
Like,
I'm kind of at a point. There was a period I feel like I was worried, not that I'm famous by any means, but I was like, well, what if the podcast did get big? And then what things in the podcast would I get canceled for? You know what I mean? So there was a little period where I was like, maybe I should tone things down, blah, blah, blah. Then cancel culture became so ridiculous where now I'm like,
you're going to see pushback.
It's just, there is no way. You're either going to just like live in constant fear and tiptoe around anything, or you just need to be like, fuck it. If I get canceled, I get canceled. You know what I mean?
Well, I gave you that idea of the guy that was selling pig anuses.
Yeah.
That's as a cooking style show. And I was like, maybe that's a little bit too far, but you're like, I fucking love it. And I'm like,
no, not far at all.
When someone has a vision of something, you can't sit there and say, you need to do this, you need that. I don't think anybody creates a list and says, I want this guy to play, I want this guy to play, I want this guy to play. They're picking their favorite people. Now you're like, well, hold on a second. Those are all white actors. You're like, well, it's his fucking, he's not just secluding a certain race. He's just thinking of the main people that he enjoys watching on the screen. If that's whatever color or person, it doesn't matter. It's his vision of what he's seeing. That means he's trying to get it to act that way. So like, let's say you take the Backwoods Radio Show. If you were going to pick actual actors to play those characters, it could be a whole gambit of things. But depending on you saying how far I can go, how far you can go is how far you think, how far you want it to go. It's your fucking masterpiece. It's your creation.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why with the podcast now, I'm just kind of, I feel like shit's just going to get even wilder next season. Cause like I said, there was that little period where I was like, maybe I should cut this part out. Maybe this is a little too extreme. And then I was like, it doesn't matter because someone's gonna always find something to be offended by. So I'm like, fuck it. I'm just gonna go wild. just go as crazy as possible.
How crazy are we talking, dude? Because I have a new level of crazy after listening to your show where I'm like, all right, are we just can I just let that little inner voice that I keep in the back? Like, what happens if I had a chalice that was a skull? Like, what happens if, yours is like Mad Max meets another Mad Max and they had a baby that was like dropped down a flight of stairs and was like, all right, this is the Mad Max baby because it's like insane. Like, what ideas are you thinking of next?
Well,
Because me and Mark have been
I've
going
got,
back and forth. I talked to Mark. I was like, Mark, he's starting back up the show. I'm so
yeah.
happy. And he was like, dude, I'm ready. I'm like, I fucking hope I can come back on and do a voice.
Well, the other thing too is, so I'm going to do this season different because from the beginning, I always would come. I didn't plan any of it out. I had little things I would plan out. I might like know where the finale was going to end up, but a lot of times that would change while I was making the season. I'd be like, ooh, I set this thing up with this character. I should pay that off, in the finale. So the way I've always done it is every week, well, every 2 weeks, I'd come up with the episode, write it, act it, record it, edit it, which was, that was hard. It was hard to do, but the show was simpler back then. Then as the show's gotten crazier, that's been hard to keep up with. So next season, I plan on, right now, I'm just writing it all at once. And then I'm going to record it all like at once, or at least like half of it, edit. So I'm going to work on it more in bulk and then roll it out probably this summer. I want to get it going because it's been so long since I've worked on it and I miss it. But the benefit of writing it ahead of time and planning out a little more is I can really let ideas like breathe. So there's like a couple episodes that I've already written that then like I came up with like a situation for a character and I can go back to that script and just make it more ridiculous. You know what I mean? So it's probably going to be pretty over the top because I'm going to have more time to like build on certain characters and situations. You know what I mean?
I look at it like if you're releasing 15 episodes over a season and you get all 15 recorded for one season, then you get to release on a time basis, like without it just being like, hey, new episode up, with like being able to have a scheduled release like once every
Yeah.
2 weeks or something. It's going to be 1,000 times easier because then instead of trying to crank out or create content for a new episode to hurry up and post by this day,
Yeah.
you can work on the next season and have
Yeah.
those ideas flowing where you can record it all. I like that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be better in some ways, writing it organically. I think there are benefits to that because, like I said, there might be times where, like, if I'm working on the season over the course of months and I think the finale is going to be one thing, and then something happens with a character in the middle of the season that I just came up with randomly, and then I'm like, oh, that's the direction this should go. So there is a benefit to that, but the downside is I was rushing a lot of episodes. You know what I mean? Because it would be like, just wrapped one up, got to come up with another one, record it, edit it, all of that. So a lot of times it's like there would be things I would have to cut out or things I wanted to add. And I'm like, I don't have time to do a crazy scene like this. And then especially my job got a lot busier. And then I just had a slew of bad shit happen with family members. It was like crazy for months. And I was like, I can't do this on the fly anymore. Cause it's because the situations like that where I was on the second to last episode and things got so crazy from literally like October and through February. We had 3 deaths in the family, not COVID, which is almost crazier. If it was COVID, you'd be like, oh, well, if it's 2020, COVID's going around. These are all unrelated, just happen all within a few months. And so I was like, I need to do the next season different because I didn't get to finish the previous season. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have unfinished shit, and my listeners, I don't want to disappoint them. It ended on such a cliffhanger and now they're waiting months, for me to finish. So I think it's going to be good. Plus, doing it on the fly, sometimes I couldn't get like guests, to do voices and stuff like
Yeah.
I would want to. Cause I gotta rush this. Okay. This person will be available like next week. Okay. I'll put something else, a different segment. So it should be good. I can plan out more, especially once I have all the scripts. I'm looking forward to like going through it and being like, okay, I, have a part for you, have a part for like Andy from Crypta,
Yeah.
Adrian from uh Valley of the Gray Skies, and what was the other one? His new podcast. I'm bad.
Are you talking about the Zodiac guy?
Evil Zodiac. Yeah. Fucking hilarious. God. Both those guys, Andy and Adrian, they had, audio dramas, and somehow or another through Instagram ended up connecting with them early on and working on Backwoods. And, it was really cool to meet people to collaborate with. And, in some ways they taught me a lot of shit, I was pretty new to it,
Yeah, I mean, the amount of effort and work that you put into this, like when you said that, like, I got to take a break for a little while, I was like, that's what you need to do. You need to reset. Like,
yeah.
Out of everything that you experienced, even everything I've experienced, you were the closest person I could relate to in a lot of these things, because we're kind of going through it at like different times a little bit.
It was weird. It was really weird. It hit a point where I was like, is this real life? How does this shit keep happening? And besides those 3 deaths, I had my cousin, who's only 25, had a heart attack, and he's good now. My boyfriend's grandpa went into the hospital like the same time as my grandma, but he's home now. So those 2 worked out, but it was it's so much all at once. My family, my mom, my brother, my dad just had COVID for the last few weeks, but they're okay. But it still is just like one thing after another.
At one point it's like, Jesus, like, can I get a break for like a couple of minutes?
It's funny because so much like both our cars broke down. I had to buy a new car. This big window in the house broke. Had to shell out money for that. Like even little things like that kept happening in addition to big things. And I was getting like so beaten down that I was like, when am I just going to snap? How much more can I take?
That's what I'm saying.
What's kind of funny is what I thought would be like the rock bottom that would push me over the edge. I almost think like, you can only fall so far before it's time to get back up. And our heat stopped working. We have propane here, and it was so cold, the heat, like the propane ran out. So we had no heat, and it was during that really cold period, like when Texas got it really bad, and the house was just freezing. We had a couple space heaters, but we have tall ceilings, so the heat's just like escaping. Yeah. And the gas company couldn't deliver for like a week. And then that same week, the car broke down. And the other car broke down like a month earlier. So we had no car, and we're just stranded in the house with no heat during the coldest week of the entire winter. And I just almost went, not that I was on the verge of death, but I went into like survival mode in the sense that I was like, well, I just got to do shit to make shit work. I pulled the dryer into, because we still have power, pulled the dryer into the kitchen and was just turning that on. So what little heat would come out of the dryer was just blowing into the house. We had one little space heater, but didn't have a car to go buy another space heater, and then that broken window was letting cold in because the guy was supposed to deliver the glass. And he came and he measured wrong, and it was too short. So then it was like another 2 weeks. And then in addition to that, so we're like, fuck it, let's buy a new car. Our cars are old. Let's just do it. We order from Carvana. They're like, okay, we'll be able to deliver your car in 3 days. We're like, awesome. Then that day they text us that the guy who was supposed to deliver the car called in sick. So I was just like trapped, bundled up in this house, stranded, can't do anything, just like trying to keep us warm, moving heaters around because we have cats all over, making sure they're warm because we take in strays. So some of them are like separated. One hangs out in the basement. He doesn't like the other cat, so he goes down there. So I had to make sure to move the heater down there for a bit, warm him up. We got one cat that's got a contagious disease to other cats, an immune disorder. She's up in my office with the door shut. So I'd have to bring the heater up here, to make sure she was warm. And it was just like craziness. And anyways,
Spread thin.
I'm rambling, but that should have been like the breaking point where I just fucking lost my mind. And then, but I came out of that like, I just felt like everything was rolling off me like water off a duck's back, where I'm like, I don't even have it in me to keep getting upset, after all the death, all the things going wrong. And then like that week was just like chaos.
Damn, dude. I was like, because I lost a few people. I lost my grandmom too. And then I remember like I went to go out my car and I still got this intestinal thing that's going on. I got a test back on it. So hopefully some promise. Normal level is supposed to be 50. My level is at 15. My doctor told me to come in because she couldn't give the information out over the phone. And I was like, if I'm fucking dying of something, let me name the disease.
Yeah.
But it was like, I mean, my car didn't start. I had to use a spare car. We had a spare car. But then like so many other things went wrong where it was like the power was out when I wanted to. I was like, the one thing I got today is a podcast. Thank God. Yeah. And then next thing I know, the power was out and I couldn't record. And I'm like, then like I wasn't feeling the gym vibe. I wasn't feeling anything. I like my only sense of therapy. And then I was getting out after getting groceries. Apparently my account got hacked. Like somebody took out $300 or something like that. So then I finally got that back. It was like it got charged back, I think just a couple days ago. But as I was getting out of my car, fucking my vape falls and breaks onto the ground. I had to go spend $100 on a vape. And I'm like, I look up the sky. I'm like, did I fuck you, Jesus?
Yeah.
Like, what happened?
That's what it feels like. Yeah.
I was like, I must have been a kick a puppy type person in a past life for me to be able to deserve this shit.
Yeah, right. I don't like to throw a pity party for myself, but it was, I mean, honestly, this was, and not just in addition to COVID, pandemic and everything, but basically since like October, this has been the hardest period of my entire life. And I'm not just being dramatic about that. I've never gone through something this crazy. And I felt the same way. I'm like, am I fucking cursed? What the fuck is happening? And I've had people say, well, you're getting older, you just turned 30, people in your life will start dying, things like that, and I'm like, I get that, but it still doesn't even seem like statistically likely for it to be all at once. You know what I mean?
It's like they say it comes in thirds, but it comes in 4, 5, 6, and 7. Also, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I felt the same way. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I did, but
I had to blame my Power Ranger buddy because
idea.
In an episode, he had quit his job and we talked about it. But he goes, I'm going to pray to God, Robbie, but I'm not going to pray for him to be able to help you. I'm going to pray that he releases his hellfire upon you so you'll truly find yourself. He told me that. And then like all this shit started happening over a few weeks. And I just texted him. I was like, tell him to take it the fuck back. Take back his hellfire. But it was like, it's not what he meant by it, but he was meaning like, I want him to help you find your true self. And to do that, you have to take down. I'm like, okay. But I was being like fucked left and right. And I was like, all right, there's something else bigger going on here. And I'm like, I don't know if it's just like, and then it's like, well, if you create positive energy, you're willing into the universe. I'm like, it's hard to be fucking positive when everything's shitting around you.
I was just about to bring that up because I'm not spiritual at all, but sometimes I do think there is like almost a karmic balance to the universe. If I have any sort of spirituality, sometimes I entertain that, and, with the whole law of attraction thing, sometimes it does seem like if you're in a negative mood, everything fucking keeps going wrong. But like you just said, when shit keeps going wrong, and it's not just petty shit, it's like big life events all back to back. It's like, how can you be positive? And so it's like, if there is like a law of attraction, you're fucked because you're just going to keep bringing more negative shit because it's so hard to be positive. And that's why it was weird when the power went out and it should have been like the straw that broke the camel's back. Instead, I was just like, fuck it. I don't care about anything anymore. Not in a way that I had no emotion, but I was just like, I can't put my energy into worrying about shit and dwelling on stuff. So it was kind of, I guess it was kind of a good thing, but
I think the
I,
happiest thing for me during even when I was having all that go on was when your messages, because like when you messaged me saying like you left a job and you were doing freelance editing is what you wanted to do, or freelance video. I hope I'm getting that right, right? Freelance.
yeah,
Well, when you told me that, I was like, fuck yes. I was like, somebody going after something that, it might seem like scary at first, but it's gonna be
yeah.
something.
Well, so for me, it's like I've always done freelance, but this place I still work for them. I was an independent contractor. But the way it worked is I wasn't like an employee, yet they treated me like an employee, not in a negative way, but like I had to be at my computer like 8 hours a day because they would send stuff randomly and need rush projects and stuff. So instead of quitting, what I ended up doing is I said, all right, you guys, there have been periods where it was like I was working like full time, crazy, tons of projects. And now it's kind of back to like the early days where I'm working like 25, 30 hours a week. And I said to them, I was like, I'm changing my office hours and I'm only working 4 hours a day. You guys need to just plan ahead and stop sending rush stuff throughout the day. Because what I said to them is I was like, in the 2 years I've been working for you guys, I've always been on call full time, but like only working part time. And I'm like, my office hours need to reflect the amount of work I'm actually doing. So right now, you guys are giving me like 25, 30 hours of work a week. That's all I'm working for you. That's
Yeah.
all I'm going to be available because they're in LA and I like working for them. It just gets hectic sometimes. And really the scheduling was the biggest issue. And
It's like when you're on call for work and it's like that means you can't plan your day out. You
can't
can't go
do
to
anything.
anything.
And what's worse is because they're in LA, so they're 3 hours behind me in Indiana. So my schedule was noon to 8 p.m., which was 9 to 5 for them.
Fuck.
So it's like, and with the pandemic, a lot of stores closed earlier. Walmart's not open 24 hours anymore, And so I put up with it for a while. And when it was really busy, I didn't mind it because I was like, fuck it, I'm just making money, But it was definitely harder with the podcast. And so it was a combination of things recently with them giving me some less work, wanting to work on the podcast more, especially. And I was like, fuck it, like take it or leave it. This is what my hours are going to be. If I'm doing 4 or 5 hours of work for you a day, that's all I'm sitting at the computer for. There's no reason you guys can't give me 24-hour notice on stuff. Stop fucking doing everything on the fly. And it's not every project, but it would still be like, say I did it. I was really busy till 3 p.m. Then like nothing. I'm just sitting around only for them to send me an urgent project they need at 7 p.m. I'm like,
What's
well, I
an
just sat
urgent
around
project?
well, they're LA people. So they,
New job?
yeah, where the doctor, it's a lot of, some of the clients, some of the doctors and stuff are really easygoing and stuff. And some are just like crazy. We need to post this. This is important, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, it's not. It can wait till tomorrow. And so finally that's what I said. I'm like, the clients can deal with it. If you want to send me rush projects, get them in before 4 p.m. my time. I don't want to be doing urgent shit at 7 p.m. So yeah, I was prepared to step away from it and just find, just miscellaneous freelance because I have some other clients too. But I was like, well, let me just propose this first because this could be, the happy medium, and it worked out. The main person, she totally understood. She's like, that makes sense. Why should you be on call full time? We should be planning ahead more, so that was good to hear.
I think it happens when you're like in a state of lull for so long and then you have like such like horrible things happen where it makes you get a realization of like money's not worth the mental anguish that I'm going through. Like, it's okay. Like I was in the beginning, I was like, I could do an episode a fucking day easy. Then like now I'm just like, yo, it's fucking hard.
Yeah.
I'm not having fun with it. I was like, yeah, man, I was like, I need to go. Like I was going out to the beach. I was sitting out on my porch where I should have been planning recordings and stuff. I'm like, fuck it. If you're getting miserable doing that, I was like, what do you consider priceless? I consider priceless my own happiness and the fact that I
Yeah.
can wake up in the morning and not want to drive off a fucking cliff.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same way. Cause I hit that point too with money where, um, I mean, it was nice making more for a while, and there'll probably be another wave where I'm making a lot again. But I was just saving it all, just hoarding it. And finally, everything in the last like month or two, I've really just kind of had like a bit of an epiphany with everything. Not in a crazy way, you know. It's not
Less
like I
Homer Simpson, more.
yeah.
Okay.
But you know, I hit a point where I'm like, I'm never gonna save enough money to like invest and get myself rich. So why not start treating myself to things and just make sure I have enough money in the bank for emergencies? What do I need a bunch of money for, you know, besides an emergency? So, because we were really frugal, we've always bought secondhand. We've
Yeah.
had like the same fucking shitty Craigslist couch for years, the same old Craigslist like kitchen table. And so I've been, especially after buying the new car, because I've never bought like a newer car, had a car payment, but it still was cheap. It was used, but in good shape from Carvana. After buying that, I'm like, well, I just shelled out a bunch of money. So that, you know, the savings took a hit. And instead of being like, we need to save more, I'm like, fuck it, let's start upgrading the house, you know? So been buying, I bought like some new recliners and still always like looking for cheap ones, going somewhere where
Do you
they're on
have a his
sale
and his
clearance.
recliner?
Yeah, we have two. Yeah, two
That's fucking
recliners.
awesome.
It's like a new kitchen table. Not like buying fancy, ridiculous shit, but like shit to basically, I'm like, I need to invest in my happiness. Why am I always making myself uncomfortable with just like, you know,
To
holding
save a
things?
buck.
Yeah, to like holding shit together with like duct tape, basically, like, you know, just why? And I guess it was because, like, once again, it was like after when we had no heat, something about it. I was like, I'm over being uncomfortable. I was just stranded in the house, you know, with not nice things. We've been stranded in the house, you know, during this whole pandemic with shitty old hand me downs that are falling apart. I'm like, need to invest in my happiness. Fuck it. You know,
That's
oh, that's what I think we were talking about it before we started recording, but I'm in a shed that I built in my office, and I got to add padding to make it, you know, not so echoey and stuff. But like this was like a few $100, so nothing like crazy. It's solid resin, had like really good reviews for, you know, not being wood. And I was like, you know, if I'm going to keep doing the podcast, I want to have like a nice little cozy, you know, more
it's
soundproof
like reading a
area.
book. It's better at the library because you have the environment to do so.
Yeah, this is going to be my little hideout.
See, somebody always mentioned me, why don't you ever treat yourself? Because I always save every single money or every dollar I make because in fear that I might one day need to go in there for like emergencies. Then I guess
That's because you're Jewish, I'm Italian. That they're basically the same breed, you know. Just I got that. My dad's a penny pincher. I've got it in me. I can't resist.
but
Sometimes stereotypes are true.
when my grandma passed, I was like, I'm fucking miserable and what I'm saving money. What is I said like the past like week, I've probably spent like $700 just like
Yeah,
buying merch for just sending people, friends of mine and shit. And I'm just like, I don't give a shit. Like if I want to fuck it, you know what? Tonight's taco night. And I just go and
yeah,
buy a bunch of
yeah,
stuff to make tacos and shit. I'm like, I don't care. I'm eating a can of tuna a day. I'm dealing with an intestinal thing that is causing me the most depressing pain in the fucking world. But I'm like,
yeah,
I want to be fucking happy. So fuck it. Instead of, oh, well, this energy drink is $2 at this store, but it's $1 at Walmart. So I'm going to drive the extra 5 minutes to go to the Walmart instead of taking what's right by my work.
yeah.
I was like, at this point, I'm just like, fuck it, dude. I want to stop being miserable and going out of my way when I'm not getting any happier doing so. So it's like,
Right,
let's just do it.
right. Yeah, no. At some point,
Plus
you
that
gotta just.
$1,400 helps.
Yeah, it sure does. Now, sometimes you gotta stop. You gotta stop pinching pennies. You know, I kind of do that because I mean, I moved out young. I was 18. And my parents were helping for a couple years when I first moved out. I was in college, but then after that, I was paying rent and stuff. So I moved out younger than most of my friends. These days, a lot of millennials stay at home longer, and I was so fucking poor and just making ends meet. And so even though, I mean, I'm making like okay money, comfortable money, that being poor is like still like branded in me, and I need to like shake it loose a little bit and be like, I don't need to buy everything secondhand. I don't need to go to Goodwill. Sometimes it's okay to buy a new kitchen table for $150. Not even that expensive.
And what's the idea of poor? Is poor like you're not able to pay for Hulu and Disney Plus, or is poor like you have to open up your fucking oven to heat your house?
Right. Yeah. I back then, I mean, it was just kind of like, I wasn't that poor, but there was never any money left over. It was paycheck to paycheck, just trying to make ends meet. And that's why I would buy everything secondhand and make a lot of stuff myself that other people might buy at the store,
Yeah.
like almost like a hippie, you know, I can't even think of, I used to make so much shit just because I didn't want to spend money on it.
Sniffing
And
less paint, being more creative with that paint.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, I was in Illinois and it hit a point, this is just a few years ago, I couldn't afford to live there anymore. I just couldn't. And that's where I'm from. That's where my family all lives. And I was like, I do not want to move back in with family. I've been out since 18. I cannot go back.
Yeah.
And so I moved to Indiana because it was so cheap. My mortgage is half of what my rent was in Illinois.
Dude, I gotta move
it's
somewhere,
crazy.
man. I'm telling you.
And I found like, there's affordable, there's affordable ways to buy a house, especially if you're willing to like live out in the country. There's a lot of programs like that because they want to populate, rural areas. They don't want everyone moving to the city. So, anyways, that's another factor too, is living here, cost of living so much cheaper for me that makes it easier to treat myself.
Well, the closest places, like for at least around here for me, is like $2,000, and I'm up at like middle of the night looking at places, and I'm like,
fuck that.
Fuck, man. Like I don't make that much in a month. Like I have
Yeah.
to. I was like, how is monthly 2,000? I was like, yeah, I got money saved up, but eventually that's going to be gone. So I don't want to just move out for 7 months and then have to come back in. I would prefer to move out and then not have to come back. So it's like, I just started looking at my cousins in Colorado, and I was like, maybe I travel farther that way. And I just try and find it. I don't mind living out where nobody's involved, where everyone just leaves me the fuck alone. Like that sounds beautiful. I can light off a Roman candle in my backyard and not have a neighbor go, excuse me, are you sending flare signals? Do you need help? I'm like, go fuck yourself, man. I'm just trying to have fun.
Oh, I wish I was more secluded. I mean, I live in a little town of 300 and it's nice, quiet,
300. Holy shit.
But I would love to just live, because there's so many, I'll see like a, nice little house and it's just surrounded by cornfields. And I'm like, that's what I want. I don't want any fucking neighbors. I want to live there, but
where the screams can't be heard.
Exactly. Those places are expensive though, because it's a lot of land. But besides that, housing's affordable out here. And that's why I moved to this little town. And even though I have neighbors, people keep to themselves. And to go from living, I mean, I lived in Chicago itself for 6 years, then the Chicagoland area. And so now being here, it's so relaxing, even though I have neighbors, compared to Chicago and Chicagoland, Jesus. When I go there now, when I visit family, it like makes me anxious to be there. I'm like, why are there so many human beings around here?
What's your, if I had to ask you, what's your dream home scenario?
Honestly, I was just thinking this the other day. This isn't necessarily what I want my life to be. But when we bought this house, I was driving down here alone from Illinois with just like carloads of stuff, because we didn't want to rent a U-Haul yet till we were like ready to move in. So I'd bring carloads of stuff and fix up some stuff that needed to be fixed up, while I was here. And so I would take the 3-hour drive down here, do housework, and I had nothing here. I had a TV, I had my Super Nintendo, but no cable, no internet. It was very analog, no furniture. We brought the microwave and I was just eating like Hot Pockets, could get a pizza from down the way. And I don't necessarily want to live the minimalist life, but sometimes when I think of that, anytime I've moved into a new place, fixed it up, I don't know if I'm ever as relaxed as when I'm just in an empty house. You know, I would like work on the house all day, and because there was nothing to do, I would just sit on the front porch at night and just have a cigar. And wasn't, you know, I had my phone, but the signal was shitty, so the phone was basically useless, and I felt like I really enjoyed life. So sometimes I think my dream home is less about location and more about just simplifying shit.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, I think I just have too much stuff. And I think stuff just clutters your life, your brain, you know?
Like even I went to when I was at my buddy's house, we had talked about this same idea, like what's a dream home? And he's like giving me his list of stuff. And I'm like, I remember I was sitting in his room, sitting in his computer chair. It was on like part of the house was raised up, but right as soon
Yeah.
as you rolled the chair back even an inch from where like the keyboard and stuff is, just so you have some space to be able to type. I like space. I like to have my legs out. I like to have like my arms stretched out real long. You fall off the little raised platform and then it's like half on the platform, half off the platform. It's just so uncomfortable. But there's like 4 screens. You're surrounded by screens. Google, everything's connected to some type of system. And I'm like, all I fucking want is a small little house, a 1 bedroom, 1
Yeah.
bath, a kitchen, and then I just want like a private fucking gym. Cause let me tell you something. And this just happened to me the other day. I don't know why I'm gonna confide this right here, right now, but I'm going to. I was just like, I don't want to live anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to do the same shit I go to a doctor's appointment. They go, well,
Yeah.
we don't want to test you for this because has anything happened bad in your life? And I'm like, well, my grandma passed. And they're like, when was that? And I'm like this. And they're like, oh, well, then they're telling me everything's stress related. I'm like, I'm fucking stressed because the cost of living is so goddamn much. I did a 4-hour elliptical
Yeah.
just,
Wow.
and and that was this morning. I felt so fucking good where I was like,
Yeah.
why was I even thinking that before? And I'm like, that's my therapy is just, ah,
Exercising does wonders. I believe it or not, despite the fact that I look like someone who might be on my 600-pound life,
no.
I used to be really thin. I used to exercise a lot. And God, I used to just fucking run all the time outside. And I would run like 3 times a day, not like a crazy long distance, just like loop around a big neighborhood, you know, maybe mile and a half. And I would just do that. I would just be bored or depressed, you know, I was in high school. And just be like, fuck it, I'm gonna go for a run. And then I just felt so much better. And once I started doing freelance work and just working on the computer, I just got so fucking fat. And then I never move because I'm just sitting at the computer, and I never exercise because now like running is painful on my knees because I'm fat. And so I'm like, God, I am so weak. I used to have such endurance, and I'm like, I need to exercise more. So when you texted me today, I was just riding the bike around town. I got a weightlifting machine. I'm not even like looking to get like ripped, but
Yeah.
I'm like, I just need to do physical shit because with my job sitting at the computer, if I don't go and do something physical, there's nothing physical about this, you know.
Yeah.
And just from, you know, going for I drank last night, and not a lot, but I drank, so I was feeling like a little, you know, hangover in my head. And I was like, usually I would just want to lay around all day. I'm like, no, I should go ride my bike. And even though the idea of it was like nauseating, after I did it, I was like, oh, I don't even feel anything now. You know, I felt good
I
just from a
literally,
little bike ride.
I literally thought I had COVID because like I was just like, I walked outside recently and I could smell and I'm like, my nose, I don't have a very good sense of smell at all.
Yeah.
Um, but like sense of taste, sense of touch is just amplified for me. That's why I think the sense of touch is the most important in my mind. It keeps you grounded to things when you can start analyzing the feeling of your fingerprints. I have ADHD, so when I'm all over the place, this helps me get really grounded to like
Yeah.
right here, right now. And I walked outside, like, I mean, just this morning, I'm right on the water, so you smell the marsh. And
Yeah.
I smelled it and I was like, oh, that would be a horrible smell for so many people. But to me, I was like, I fucking love it. Cause like it's just so like in your face. It's so fuck you. It's so like I'm here. And I'm like, hi, at least I can smell, but holy shit, like I can pay attention. I can focus on right here, right now. You know, that's why when you see me do these podcasts, if I look all over the room and stuff, it's like my brain's trying to find something to fucking hook onto. And I'm like, it's so nice sometimes to just sit and slow the fuck down.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And live in the moment, you know. That's why, like with therapy, with people who kind of get lost in their head, they do say, like, find something to make yourself present, you know, focus on something, like you said, touching something, you know. And when I was fixing up this house before we moved in, it was just empty and I had nothing to do. I felt so present. You know what I mean? There was
Yeah.
no distraction. There is something to be said about that, you know? And I was thinking, the reason I was also thinking about like just really getting rid of shit. I've done it before, especially like before moving. Now we've been here a while and I feel like we've accumulated so much stuff. Plus, we sell stuff on eBay. So we have a lot of like inventory, which takes up space. Um, and I was really thinking about it. I'm like, everything I do, work and creative, is on this computer right here. This is like my life, this little computer. I was thinking, I'm like, I don't really need anything else besides this computer to do everything I love to do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why do I have all this other shit? You know what I mean? I like video games too, so you know, TV and a PS4. But other than that,
Two
I'm like,
days it
what
took
do
me
I
at.
need all this stuff
I
for?
made it to level 195 in 2 days on Viva Pinata, just fucking around all
Viva Pinata.
insane amount. But the funny thing was, like, my grandma passed a few weeks ago, so we have all of her stuff here as well. But I'm
Yeah.
like, my mom's like, what do you want? Like, we got the old vinyl actual record player bunch. I was like, yeah, I'll take some Sinatra's tape. Sure. I'll put them in like a little thing and minimize it. But she was like, what else do you want? Do you want the couch? Do you want the chairs? I need something to do with all this stuff, or I'm gonna have my friends take it. And
Yeah.
I just go, I want all the photos.
Yeah.
Everything you fucking have, and I'm gonna fucking order it and put it in a collage and stuff too. But I was like, I was minimalizing everything. I mean, I started looking around my room, taking out old clothes, stuff I hadn't worn in forever. I mean, I pulled this flannel out from like the
Yeah.
time we podcasted very first time. And I was just like, man, there's some stuff I don't use. There's some stuff I can just throw out, give away, whatever. And my mom texted me like I was getting ready for bed. I don't know if I sent you that picture of that card.
Yeah.
Was like, hey, I found this at the house, come downstairs. And it was a graduation card from when I graduated college. Apparently my grandma thought she sent it off. She didn't. It was left at the house. So, but it had $100 check in it. And my
Yeah.
mom's like, cash it. I'm like, I'm going to keep it because it's her handwriting. But in
Yeah.
the, do that, I would lie if I said that card did not make me cry. It made me bawl my fucking eyes
Oh,
out.
sure.
But it was like the first thought in my head came in and my cousin snapped me out of it. I was like, oh my God, she probably thought I got this and I never thanked her for it. And he goes, what the fuck? Happy you have it, man. Like,
Yeah.
I
Right.
don't think she's
Stop.
thinking that
Don't
way.
think so much. You
But
can't
there's so
think too
much you'll
much.
let into your head to
Yeah.
let you like just clog it up with information or clog it up so much you
Yeah.
can't freaking feel or think or you can't be happy. And I'm like, that's you gotta clear it up here and then you gotta clear it in reality too with everything
Yeah.
in your house.
Because I mean, I tend to overthink shit like that too with everything. Um, Oddly enough, I don't do it with death. I'm really good at handling death, and you know, people, because I'm a staunch atheist. I don't preach it, but I don't believe in anything. And I hope there's nothing. I don't want to do another round of living after I die. I would rather just blink out, not even know I'm gone. And because I feel that that's what happens, um, that comforts me. I think that gives a lot of people angst, but for me, when a family member's gone, they're gone. You know, that's how I feel. And um it makes it easy for me to not feel regret. because I don't feel like, oh, what if they're watching? What if they feel this? What if they feel? And I'm like, no, I know I had a good relationship with these people, and I had a good time with them. And now that time is over and they're just gone. So I need to just move on. I don't dwell and wonder, are they looking down on me? Are they, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it has like the opposite effect for me that it might have for other people, where it makes it easier to cope, and not let my mind wander, because I don't wonder about the existential stuff. But with everything else, I certainly overthink. I overthink things in this realm, living things.
Yeah, it's best to cherish some things, but living in a what if scenario is so
Oh
damn
yeah, because
toxic.
I'm not saying I don't think about, like, my grandma. I mean, she really was like a second mom to me. I mean, when I moved out, I had a period. My parents really weren't helping. My dad's an immigrant from Italy. He's different. So he wasn't really helping out. My grandma would help me a lot. And not with like money, but she would just, because she used to grocery shop and look for sales and coupon. And she would she gave me this giant suitcase, like almost as big as me. And she would tell me to take the train to Illinois, or to, Chicagoland, from Chicago. And she would just fill that suitcase up with food for me, like frozen food, cereal, all this stuff she got on sale. And I would just haul this giant suitcase. And so it was really, really, really close with my grandma. And even though what I was just saying about coping being easier for me because of my philosophy, that I don't wonder about things, there's still every day things remind me of her,
Yeah.
because like I just said, she was obsessed with food. She had she had 3 freezers. Wait, one? The fridge and
She's
freezer?
prepping, bro.
The fridge and freezer. She had a chest freezer in her kitchen, a chest freezer in her basement, and then a stand-up freezer in her garage, just packed with food, all of them. And so anyways, we got this little chest freezer that was on sale, and because we cleared out this room, had a little space. I'm like, this will be good to, buy meat and stuff. And buying that chest freezer, such a silly thing, but I was like, God, I wish I could call my grandma and tell her about this chest freezer. I was like, she'd be sending my aunt, who was living with her to take care of her. I know she would have sent her right to Home Depot to get her one, even though she already had 4, so little things like that, every little thing, because she was such a big part of my life, but those things, it makes me happy. It doesn't really make me sad, even though it sucks I couldn't call her and tell her. It just like makes me laugh. I'm like, oh, she would have loved this fucking freezer.
I was I was trying to think of the lessons she taught me. Like, dude, I did a puzzle the other day, because we always used to do puzzles when I was a little kid. And my brother has a kid now. My little nephew came over, and I was like, we'll spend some time with him. He got me in the feels, man. He was like, Uncle Wobby, because he can't say his R's.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh. But we were doing a puzzle. He's like, what's this? I'm like, I used to do puzzles with my grandma, and we're doing puzzles and stuff. And I remember I thought back to when she lived with us for a little while. And we were taking care of her. We were helping her out. Like, this is when I was like 10, 12 years old. And we were sitting out. She would always watch us play basketball in the back. She had a screened in back patio. She would I should have a bowl of salt and vinegar potato chips. And she would take one at a time, and she would just put it in her mouth. And I mean, eat it for 10 minutes. And then she'd move on to the next one. She's like, you have to enjoy your food. And I remember thinking of that, like, I think just the other day, and I grabbed a little bowl, put some, like, a little bit, like, I don't know if it was Tostitos Hint of Lime, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And I just put it out in the thing. I just took one, put it in my mouth. I'm like sitting back, and like these old chairs that used to be hers. And I'm like looking up, and I'm like, nah, I'm sorry. I can't do it. That's going to take forever. And it was just like, I chuckled and laughed to myself, but it was like this sense of like, I don't know, that that was just too funny to me. And man, there's just,
because it's almost like you're trying to do something sappy.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, and then you're like, fuck it.
I was like, I can't do this one. I'm sorry. I'll smoke a Marlboro for you, sure. But oh my God, that's terrible. But like, yeah. So I mean, I was happy the last few moments, like before she got really bad. I think the night I was there, like my mom was always like, she was holding on. I was like, I don't know if I believe that, but I'll never forget the night I came over on Monday. She died Wednesday. I was talking to her, and she was doing full sentences. Like, I mean, as much as she could with COPD. And
Yeah.
then eventually, as like a couple hours I was there, she just stopped talking and then kind of shut down.
Yeah.
And I picked her up, put her in her final spot and everything like that. But it was funny. I was like, I was holding her hand. I was like, it's okay if you want to go. Like, mom says you're holding on. I'm gonna be fine. Everybody else is gonna be fine. And she just had her eyes shut and she wasn't responding. And I was like, oh my God, is this like get a mirror, check under the nose? And she just like pops open her eyes. She goes, I'm trying to take a nap. Can you shut up? And I just busted out laughing. But
Yeah.
it's those moments, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, yeah. It's funny. My grandma, she's, so she had a stroke a couple years ago. So she kind of wasn't the same for the last couple of years. So her death was like a long time coming, coming to terms with it. The first time she did flatline in the hospital, I mean, I did have a panic attack that night. And then a couple weeks later, she ended up dying. And I feel like I had already went through that. So I was just like relieved she wasn't suffering anymore. Whereas like my father-in-law who died, that was very sudden. He wasn't old, came out of nowhere. So that was, that was hard. So I don't even know where I was going with this. I have no idea. I just got sidetracked. I had a point.
I messed you up with that chip story, didn't I?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about chips. I just want chips now.
I got that hint of lime stuck on the tip of the tongue.
But oh yeah, with my grandma. So even though she kind of was out of her mind after the stroke and everything, it's funny. She's in the hospital, and only my aunt could go, and so she would FaceTime so I could see my grandma. And she just, because she's just laying in the bed, and my aunt's like talking to the doctor, and the whole time my grandma in the background just keeps going, oh, my ass hurts. Oh, my ass. And they're like trying to have a serious conversation about like her fate, what's going to happen. Someone's got to do something about my ass. She's just like yelling. And it was just cracking me up because I'm like, well, that's pure her, even if she's still, kind of out of it. So yeah, I don't know. Grandmas are funny. Grandmas are a different breed, especially when you got a good one, like old fashioned grandma who's like, like your second mom.
Yeah.
That you see in like movies, and that's like how my grandma was for sure.
Yeah, I think especially because like from June to like, or not even June, a little bit maybe before that, until I think it was the beginning of March was how long she stayed on for.
Yeah.
And it was like she old classic fashion type. I'm gonna die in my house. I don't want to die around. She was very, very
Yeah.
private of a person.
Yeah.
Which made it difficult as shit when you're at the crematorium and they're
Yeah.
asking like, what was her father's name? What was her, and they're trying to get everything. And we're like, I have to fucking Google. Like we were Googling where she was from and then looking around places in that area. And oh my God. But she was so private. And I remember what my mom said sticks in my head was like, she goes, oh my God, she would kill me if she found out she's being wheeled out of her house right now, put into one of those hearse in front of all of her neighbors, because she wanted to be so private. But my mom was like, well, she did want to be out feet first. They said they'd have to drag her out of her house. And it's like, at that moment, it's like, damn, it's like, you understand, like, oh, she was so old school martini girl. I'm like, man.
Yeah, for sure. My grandma's the same way. She really should have been in a home or had a nurse. She refused to leave her house. She wouldn't. And she was barely mobile. And that's why my aunt moved in with her, to take care of her. So she wasn't alone for long, but man, we were like, Grandma, it'll be good for you. They'll help you. They'll help you get around. And she just did not want to leave her house, And I feel like she held on as long as she did in the hospital because she just wanted to go home.
Yeah.
All she ever wanted to do. Didn't work out, but at least her kids were there. They got to go in because of COVID, didn't get to go in and see her and stuff, but what are you gonna do?
It's so crazy to me how like we met through your mom's house podcast, first of all.
Yeah.
But it's funny how like we talked, I mean, not even probably more than a year ago now.
I think so.
And we're different states, different, like basically other sides of the country from each other, but our situation is so fucking similar.
Yeah. It's weird. It's weird how it's weird how like parallel it has run, both our situations. It's very odd. It's odd that we happen to meet each other and then are both cursed with some sort of hex. I don't know.
Fucking broke a mirror or something happened.
Something.
I think we pissed off like a genie or a witch.
A genie, maybe a genie. That would make sense. Yeah, I told you I don't believe in shit yet. When shit was going crazy, I was like burning sage in my house. I'm like, I need to get rid of this. I need to purge these demons. I don't know if this shit's real, but I'll try anything. I don't know what the fuck's happening. I'm just burning sage all the time.
I felt like it was like Papa John was just hexing me somehow. Because
you know what? That's he said the day of reckoning would come. He guaranteed it, and he fucking made 2020 happen. And that's what happens when you oust a man from his fucking pizza restaurant. You don't fuck with a man's pizza.
I didn't know you had a whole video thing on him until I sent you the shirt idea I made. I'm like, oh my God, we think the same thing. Because he blocked me off social media, so I can't contact him.
That's one of my favorite videos I've ever made. Some of those are like my favorite because I spend so much time editing these just corporate videos, and the podcast is really fun to edit, but it's audio, and my roots are editing video. So every so often, something happens that I'm like, and if I have the time to do it, I can make like a video meme,
a beautiful Garth Brooks.
And it's always depraved. It's always dark. I have a twisted sense of humor. I only like dark shit. Sometimes I say, I'm like, it's like I was meant to be goth. I've never been close to goth. Like,
that's how you get hexed, bro. That's how you get hexed.
It's like I was meant to be a goth kid, but I just never bought the trip pants. So never made that transition. But yeah, the Papa John's video, or the Alex Jones one I just made. I love making that shit. I wish I had more time to make stuff like that. And maybe I will now with this new schedule.
It's funny because I was sitting with my brother and my nephew, and we had a few people over the house, like guests, and we were watching. It was like country music station. It just showed you like the top hits of country. And Garth Brooks' face popped up. Like, it's Garth Brooks, but his real name is something else. And they looked at it and they're like, "Well, that's his real name." And I'm like, "I got a funny story about this guy." So I just pulled up your Instagram and showed them the Garth Brooks, and now they can't unsee it. I'm like,
what have I made? I've made two Garth videos. The Saw one was the one Tom Segura reposted, and then I made another one a little while later. Yeah, that was like my first. When that happened, fuck. I feel like a washed up loser just dwelling on the one great thing that happened to me. But like, I'll repost that video every so often just to like relive the glory of like the time I posted that. Didn't expect anything.
You got plenty more in the tank, bro. You got plenty more.
I've made a bunch, but not that many considering it's been like over the course of like year and a half. I love making shit like that. And I never, some stuff does get reposted or blows up, some doesn't, but I never care about that. I really don't, because I'm just like obsessed with creating. It's like all I ever want to do. So even though it's something like such a stupid video and concept, I'll just like, the idea pops in my head and I'm like, I need to make this. I need to just make this now. And I'll just like blow off work, spend time making some fucking Garth Brooks video or RPC video, and just like spend too much time. Like, it's so fucking stupid and silly. And I'm nitpicking it like it's a work of art, down to like the finest details. And then posting it is more just like, oh, I'm done. I just need to get it off my chest.
Yeah.
So I never like care or expect. I don't check to see if I think you might have, maybe you one time, I think one of my buddies another time. I usually don't see when something like that happens. Someone like tells me like, did you see Tom Segura shared your thing? I'm like, no, I wasn't checking the video expecting something.
Well, that's why I found you. I was listening to the podcast episode. I think it was the one with Ryan.
I got quite a few listeners just from those videos that have nothing to do with the podcast, but they show like my sense of humor and my style. And then people listen to the podcast. They're like, oh yeah, this is fun.
It was the one I think with Ryan Sickler, And then I think Joe Coy, you were mentioned as well too, where I told you the Joe Coy one. I was like, dude, you got the best episode because it was
Yeah.
him making Joe Coy try and puke, and it was just too funny for me.
Yeah.
But I remember I was sitting in my garage doing some lap, I had a lap machine in there, and I heard Squatch Ronson. I'm like, all right, well, if he's on Instagram, let me find him. And I
Yeah.
reached out to you, but right as we recorded, I had recorded with Josh Adam Myers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I felt like I was talking to two famous people. I'm like,
Yeah.
fucking what? And then after Josh was on, I had you on, and I was like, I'm having way funner of a time with it because, man, it's all about the Baltimore twang. And I'm like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, we both got to be like YMH adjacent for a bit there.
YMH adjacent.
Yeah.
I like that.
Real
I don't know.
close.
Christmas Curious is better.
Christmas Curious. It's fun. It's exciting, and it makes you, it's with comedians and with like social media, it doesn't feel like meeting a famous person per se when they, if you, it just feels, I don't know, it feels like them because you listen to their podcast all the time and stuff. So it's less like, it's not like it's like life changing. It's just like, oh, fucking cool. And then for them to like share it a couple times and remember my handle, I'm like, this is awesome. It's cool to, and it would just be like, I know there's some people that would get like hooked on that, but for me, it's just like cool when it happens. That's why I'll go. No, go ahead.
I'll say it's like when I told Johnny Pemberton to go fuck himself.
Yeah. It's just like, like that's why I'll go like long periods without making, I have people sometimes that will be like, you need to make another YMH thing. And I'm like, well, I do it when I want to, when I'm inspired by something, like I did the YMH Cube last, I think when they were doing the Joel Osteen one. And Tom commented on it and I was like, oh, that's enough for me. I don't need him to repost it, and, but yeah, I could see why like people could get addicted to that, but I'm like, well, I don't want to feel that way. I want to just make something when I feel like it. If it gets like picked up, that's awesome. But like, I think the problem is because then if you're making shit all the time and expecting it to be like featured on a podcast you like, you know what I mean? You're going to hit a point that then you get like resentful if they don't, because you've like ruined your relationship with it. Your goal now is just to get like reposted by a celebrity you like.
Yeah.
So I try and like, make something, and then I might not make something for months and months, because I just want to enjoy it as a listener. I don't want to.
Well, I think people look at it like, especially if you're famous going on a podcast, it's like people look at your following content and think like, oh, well, if that guy gets number one celebrity, like so many podcasts that are like interview podcasts, they talk to people and they're all famous people. Like you saw him in Back to the Future. He was guy number 3, or it's always like famous people. And I'm like, man, the funnest conversations I've ever had were with people that you didn't know who they were, because the whole conversation basis changes. Like if I ask someone to be on a show now and they go, when can we do the interview? And I'm like, are you fucking Mariah Carey? Because that's the only person that deserves an interview in my mind. And it's like, it's legit conversation. And the whole questions changed when Johnny started acting like this guy of like, oh, where's the list of questions? I'm like, I've heard you on a podcast talk to people that are way more famous than you, and you have a completely different attitude. But once that sense of like, I'm higher up than you comes in, it turns into a stale conversation, man, where I'm just like, I've had so much fun with people that are just here to talk about God knows what.
Yeah. It might seem like denial for people like us to say like, oh, I don't care about getting famous. Like people don't believe when you say that. But like I scroll through TikTok a lot and I see, and all people talk about and care about is blowing up, like a post blowing up. It's all they care about. They're not even making art. They're just making a stupid fucking video with, that say is like risque or whatever, just hoping that they're going to get verified, that they're going to get a ton of views. And like, I think that's the worst thing for creativity. Honestly, you're better off just like doing the creative things you like. And if it works out, it works out, the podcast, I fucking miss it. And, I can't wait to start working on it again. But because I haven't been working on it, I haven't checked my numbers in months because I'm like, why? I don't care. I don't care if it's gone down. I don't care if it's gone up. I check the numbers when I'm posting a new episode to, get a feel for, oh, did people like this episode more? Or did they like that style of episode more? Because I'm always experimenting, the show's changed a lot in the first 2 seasons. I would argue that the second season got too insane. So I'm going to try and find like a happy medium with the third season.
All my tab pages are on that. When I like the anchor, it shows you your analytics.
Yeah.
I just hit new episode, post a new episode, and then I hit new episode again. So when I come back the next day to post another episode, it won't show me the views on the episode. So I don't have to sit there and how many people stare at the follower count and just refresh. I'm like,
that's not a good way to create. I feel like early on when I was getting a surge of listeners, I was definitely doing that. And I hit a point where I'm like, I need to stop. I don't, because it's like
sucks the joy out.
Yeah. And then I think too much about the numbers. You know what I mean? Whereas like, I just want to, if I have an idea, I want to run with it. I don't want to be like, oh, well, people didn't like the other episode that was like that. I do that to an extent. I think that's important to do, to respect your audience. So looking at numbers can be beneficial. Be like, oh, like the mini-sodes I was doing don't get nearly as many listens as the main episodes. And, I'm going back and forth on what I want to do with that because I know some people like them, so I don't want to cut them out and, upset those people. But I also am like, they kind of are, a waste of time in the big picture when you look at the numbers. And then I decided, I'm like, well, this is why it's not always good to look at the numbers, because I really enjoy doing the minisodes. I do them for fun. A lot of times it's just like, oh, I introduce a character just by name. Oh, let's do a minisode that dives into that character's backstory.
It's like a Russian nesting doll. You're thinking you get the big one, but there's a little bunch of little ones inside. I like this.
Exactly. So, I'm like, I'll probably cut back on them, maybe do like one a month instead of, every off week. But I'm like, well, I don't really care if people if a bunch of people listen to them. A few people do, and it adds to the podcast, so yeah, that's why you can't think about like the numbers, the fame, that shit too much. You got to enjoy the art itself.
Yeah, I think a lot of it people look at like, I just want to be number one, but like, do you want to be famous? I mean, because fame isn't looking too much like the best thing right now with everybody yelling and social media.
I agree. Again, it's funny that both, I mentioned Adrian and Andy, they were like the ones early on who would like tell me that, oh, you're in the top charts in this category right now, which happened a couple times. Like I was like in the top 5 and like on iTunes in Mexico.
Where I did like a cross.
Huh?
Where is Maristat or Mercent or something like that? It's like in Russia or something.
Oh, I don't know. Why are you big there?
I'm fucking number 1 there. And I'm like, where the fuck is this place?
When I was like in the top in Mexico, I'm like, that's fucking awesome. I would never expect that. And I think it's just because I did a crossover with Adrian, But yeah, I have ones where I'm like, why here? Yeah. How random.
Freaking wherever Nicaragua is, I think I started a cult because there are like hardcore.
Yeah, right. And I just think it's just funny that someone else usually notices these things because I don't sit around refreshing and trying, oh, am I famous yet? And so it's I think it's just better that way. I think it's better for the creativity. And I think the reason I came to terms with that and wanted to focus on the creative stuff more is because I was a video editor. I was editing videos on a Mac before people had Macs, since like 13. And so when YouTube dropped, I was one of the first people like posting on YouTube, and I didn't like keep up with it. I wasn't consistent. And then I saw like other videos posted around the same time that fucking blew up that didn't have nearly as much like effort as what I put into mine, And I remember that just upsetting me as a teenager. I'm like, I could have been famous. I could have been rich, And I'm like I
the
should have
Vine
posted
stars.
videos. Exactly. I'm like, I was like on it, like ground zero. And there was a little period where I was trying to make videos in the hopes of them, like, blowing up way back then. And then it just, like, I was like, this isn't fun. It's like ruining the fun for me. And so I just stopped giving a shit.
There's gonna end up being a new platform that I predicted so much shit now. I'm like predicting this. Like I predicted I said Pepsi, like, well, people say like you're racist for drinking Pepsi. Freaking Coke 2 weeks later put out a thing how to be less white. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I think the housing market's gonna crash. I think Mr. Rogers people are gonna find out about. But I mean, I think there's going to be a new social media app. There is literally 5 million hours that get posted onto YouTube every minute. 5 million every minute. They
Yeah.
have a new thing on the YouTube now called a check stage. So there used to be details, publish, and then it used to be like a schedule or something like that. It used to be
Yeah.
3 tabs. Now there's 4. It's check. So after it processes, it checks and it searches
Yeah.
your whole video for explicit content. And I remember
Mhm.
because before that happened, my account got denied on a video that I was promoting, and it was with Mark. But I had said a couple of things I didn't realize that were not the best. And I was
Yeah.
talking about how in 2005, there was a priest that had herpes that had, did a circumcision the Orthodox way and gave
Yeah.
it to the baby.
Yeah. I know
Yeah.
all about that.
And fucking Mark, you got to listen to Mark's reaction like that, Robbie, that's not true. And I'm like, it is. He Googles
It
it. He's
is
like,
true.
oh my God.
Yeah. No, I listened. If that was the second one Mark was on, I listened to that one.
But what do you call it? That YouTube denied me from that, and then they had to review my whole count. And then they found the Freemason episode and they wanted to deny that too. And I'm like, it's an actual place, and I had an actual expert who's involved in it on. What are you
Right.
talking about? But it's like now, like, what's the checks now? They just get to start picking. I think eventually somebody's going to create a platform where it's like, say whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, right. That's the thing with cancel culture. It's so crazy that I'm like over it. The only thing I worry about is I'm like, my podcast is so vile that I'm like, I hope,
Nobody's going to take it serious.
they shouldn't. It's so fucking ridiculous. But I'm like, I hope like podcast apps don't start doing what YouTube does and just deeming everything inappropriate because they're like, what if kids listen? Well, fuck your kids. What kids shouldn't be on the internet, honestly. There should be like if your kid is underage, like they shouldn't even be able to see things. You know what I mean? It's supposed to be that way, but kids just lie about their age, put 18, there's 10-year-olds on watching Pornhub and shit. And so I worry about that with them doing that sort of shit. Cause like, for example, when I've done like ads through Facebook or I've tried to do an ad through like Spotify, that's where they crack down. And they're like, advertisements can't have any violence or blah, blah. And I'm like, well, that's the whole podcast. The whole podcast is like absurdist violence. It's like 80s horror schlock. So I'm like, I don't even know how to make a safe ad. It's a little easier with Facebook because I can use some of my visuals that are just gross, the things I draw, and they've blocked those sometimes. I'm like, it's not nudity, it's not it's a lumpy cartoon character, And so I'm like, I hope that shit doesn't bleed over into like them shutting down your RSS feed because I'm like, what am I gonna record and mail out cassette tapes? Is that the only way to be safe?
There's a YouTube video I have to send you, but it's like someone did an animated short of Ed, Ed, and Eddie.
Yeah.
But it's very, very scary. Like Eddie's really like his head's huge, but his body's really small and his face is all melted like goo.
Like
and
a
he's like,
creepypasta.
yeah, but his eyes are white and he just goes, Kevin, would you like a jawbreaker? And he's like, what? He goes, if you go behind that curtain, you will be forever changed. Kevin's just normal. He's like, all right, man, here's a quarter. Just shut up. I'm going to go through nerds. And he walks through. Dude, they've got Johnny, Sarah, everybody from Ed, and Eddie sitting on a stool tied up with their jaw broken off. Ed breaks Kevin's jaw and Eddie morphs it all into one giant jawbreaker and then eats it. And he goes, and all will be revealed. And it's like, this is on it's like when I watched porn when I was a kid. You talk about 8-year-olds watching porn. I'm surprised anybody comes out straight or whatever, because that is some scary shit. When I saw a vagina at a young age, I was like, ah!
Oh, I I knew pretty early on I didn't like that shit.
Oh my God, it looked like a fucking flounder. I was like, where's the
Flounder.
eyes?
It is, I always say this though, it is funny when you watch like 70s horror, especially like the alien movies, every like outer space creature looks like a dick or a vagina. Always, like the face hugger is like a vagina with legs. The alien that pops out of the chest looks like a little dick. And it's funny because human genitalia is weird looking compared to the rest of us. It looks like it was like sculpted on by a different artist, and so I love that, like in old horror their inclination is to just make everything look like dick and balls. It's so much fun to see.
I just watched an episode of Futurama where they turned Bender into a human.
Classic.
And he's like, oh my God, where's my antenna? Oh, it just moved places.
Yeah,
I'm not getting good reception. And then he goes down. He goes, maybe if I hit it a couple of times, like, no, don't do that. Something's going to happen.
I love Futurama. I used to watch that shit constantly. I had the DVDs, and I always like to, go to sleep watching something, and I would just let those DVDs play over and over, and then it would get through like the season or whatever, and then go back to the menu screen, which would keep repeating and wake me up, and so I'd have to wake up, turn over, and press play again, and then go back to sleep. I used to watch Futurama religiously.
It's weird because now the news to me is on the same level as Family Guy. And I know people are like, oh, yeah, sure. But I'm like, Family Guy told me Patrick Swayze was dead. I didn't know. And I started looking at Family Guy. They're very, very like accurate. They're like, they even say in the subtitles, look it up. And then you look it up and you're like, oh my God, it is true. Like this is actually what happened in like the politics or something. I'm like, it's so crazy because like the news now to me, I'm like looking at it when I was on the elliptical, I was reading the headline. It said Brazil's cases of coronavirus has spiked and their healthcare system is crashing. I'm like, is it really though? Is it bad? Or are you making it sound like it's the worst fucking thing in the world and we're all fucking doomed?
Yeah, right. Well, like when they were saying how bad Italy was, I still have a lot of family in Italy. Like I said, my dad is from Italy. Moved here when he was a kid, and I know it was bad there, but at the same time, none of my family over there was affected, So I'm like, I mean, is it as bad? Maybe it's just the area they were in. I'm not questioning saying COVID's fake. I know it's real. I know a lot of people who've had it now. I know like 14 people. But it was weird because like, asking my Italian family, like, oh, how are they doing down there? And they're like, they're fine. They're just staying inside, and I'm like, oh, the news makes it sound like it's like the zombie apocalypse over there, So I don't know. You can't trust the news. They are biased. You have to dive into different sources always.
The best example
anything I read, I go and verify. And it's crazy how many people just like watch a TikTok, watch a video on Instagram and believe it. I don't believe in shit. As soon as I see something, I'm like, oh, let me look this up. I never believe something. And even if I'm reading an article, if I read it there, I'm like, is this true? I have to go look somewhere else.
Yeah.
We grew up in the internet era. So it's like, I've watched it like devolve,
If people go to a buffet, do they strictly stick to one food or do they grab a bunch from a different other plates? Then why aren't you doing that with the stream of information that's given to you?
Right. Exactly. And you should not be getting your information from one source. It's ridiculous.
The best example I can give you is my 7th episode, I think. I had Scott Glorioso on, who's like a family friend, and we were talking about like he flew to Philly. As soon as he hops off the airport, he goes, I hopped off the airport, I got whatever off the airplane, walked out of the airport, looked first thing on the floor as soon as I landed, and it said, fuck you. And I was just like, imagine that. I could just be like, Philly was as a place full of assholes. I don't want to be here anymore. And I went home. And that was your own interpretation of that. I was like, you got to go farther than just the fucking parking lot of the airport.
Yeah, right. Exactly. My aunt is always like, why would you move to Indiana? It's so boring. And I'm like, there's a lot of great stuff in Indiana. When have you ever even been to Indiana? She's like, when we drive to Florida. I'm like, when you pass through on a country highway, you think that's all of Indiana?
The biggest ball of yarn.
One? Yeah, is that one country highway? You don't think we have cities here? Like, what do you, lunatic?
Well, look, Michael, we're about to go on 2 hours here, man.
Wow.
Where can people find your lovely self? Your Instagram podcast as well when it kicks back up.
Best place is Instagram at Squatch Ronson. And then I've got links to the podcast there. You can find the podcast on pretty much every platform. It's called the Backwoods Radio Show. Yeah, I pretty much focus on, I have a Twitter. I barely use it. Instagram is where to find me because I can post more visual and audio stuff. So yeah.
Well, I'll make sure I link it all in the description. And anything you want to wrap up on?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm good.
Okay. You feel full?
Yeah, always.
All right. Just making sure. All right. Thanks. Thank you
All
for
right,
listening,
brother.
everybody.